Taurus. The 7 vices that the universe only allows for Tauruses. Addiction. That word scares you, doesn't it? She should, but not for the reason you're thinking. Because there are 2 types of addiction in this world. The addiction that destroys, the one you know, the one the world has taught you to fear, the one society has spent centuries cataloging and condemning. And there is another type. A type that the world almost never talks about because it doesn't know how to classify it. A type that doesn't fit within the categories of what is right or wrong, disciplined or indulgent, virtuous or flawed. It is an addiction born from a nature so specific, so unique, so profoundly shaped by the stars that it simply does not exist in any other sign of the zodiac in the same way. These are the vices of Taurus, and today I'm going to tell you 7, not to embarrass you, not to reform you, but so that you, perhaps for the first time, can look at those parts of yourself that the world tried to convince you were weaknesses, and realize that the universe placed them in you with a precision that was not by accident. Every vice of Taurus has a reason, and when you understand the reason, you will stop making excuses for your nature and begin to inhabit it with pride. Let's begin. Before the 7, I need to tell you something about the word allow. The title of this video is no accident. I chose the word allows with great care because the universe doesn't distribute vices randomly. Each sign carries exactly the tendencies that correspond to its life mission, its structural strengths, the lessons it came to learn, and the contributions it came to offer. Aries vices exist to temper courage, Geminis to sharpen intelligence, Cancers to deepen love, and the vices of Taurus, those 7 you're about to hear about, exist for a very specific reason, to anchor Taurus in its own truth when the whole world tries to convince you to be something else. That's no excuse, it's context, and context changes everything. Addiction 1, pleasure as a religion. Taurus does not experience pleasure in the same way that other signs do. When a Taurus bites into something delicious, and I'm not talking about eating out of hunger, but that moment when the right food meets the right mood and the right environment, something happens in the Taurus body that is almost meditative, an expansion, a loosening of all the tensions that the day has accumulated, a return to one's own body that happens in such a complete way that it borders on the sacred. The same is true of a long bath after a long day, of the texture of a fabric that pleases the skin, of the perfect temperature of a sunny afternoon, of the smell of food being prepared at home. Taurus not only notices these things, Taurus also inhabits. They immerse themselves in them with a completeness that most people only experience in rare moments of full presence, and which for Taurus is simply the default way of being in the world. The problem, and here's the addictive side, is that Taurus can use pleasure as a refuge from what is difficult. When the pain is too great, when the decision is too complicated, when the necessary conversation is too frightening, Taurus finds a meal, a TV series, a bath, a blanket, and settles there, not out of laziness, out of a real and urgent need for sensory restoration that the world rarely validates as legitimate. But the universe placed this vice in Taurus for a reason, because the world needs people who remember that existence must be pleasurable, that life is not just about production, results, and delivery, that the body deserves attention before it collapses. Taurus is the guardian of this memory, and their addiction to pleasure is at its core a philosophy of life disguised as indulgence. Vice 2, stubbornness as a form of survival. Let's be honest about something nobody likes to hear, and Taurus even less so. You are stubborn. Not just a little, not just sometimes. In a way that might make the people around you want to scream, shake you by the shoulders, and ask out loud if you're made of stone inside. And the honest answer is, sometimes, yes. But here's what nobody tells you about Taurus's stubbornness, and I need you to hear it without any defenses. She's not stupid, it quotes, not empty pride. It's not a refusal to see what's right in front of you. Taurus's stubbornness stems from painful memories. Every position that Taurus defends tooth and nail was built after real experiences, real attempts, real mistakes that truly cost something. Taurus isn't stubborn about random things. He's stubborn about things he's already tested, that he's already lived through, that he's already learned on his own works a certain way and not another. The problem lies in the difficulty of distinguishing between stubbornness that protects and stubbornness that imprisons, between the legitimate "I already know this doesn't work for me" and the "I don't want to change because change hurts," disguised as conviction. This distinction is Taurus's most difficult task, and also the most liberating when it finally happens. The universe placed this vice in you because a world without Taurus would be a world that changes its mind at the first sign of trouble. A world that abandons what it started at the first difficulty. A world where no one is capable of holding a stand when everyone around is giving in. You are the linchpin. Your stubbornness, when properly channeled, is what keeps some of the world's structures standing. Addiction 3, hoarding as a language of security. Pause this video for a second and look around where you are. Count how many things there have a story. How many arrived with an embedded memory. How many you can't imagine discarding, not because they need you, but because somehow you still need them. This is Taurus's third vice, hoarding. Not necessarily objects, although that's frequent, but people, memories, situations that have already ended, feelings that have served their purpose but that Taurus keeps as if they were precious possessions that no one has the right to touch. Taurus accumulates because for Taurus, having is a language of security that the world has taught them since childhood. In an unpredictable world where people leave and circumstances change without warning, the things they remain, objects remain, memories remain, and while they remain, they prove that something was real. Addiction lies on the fine line between preserving what nourishes and clinging to what should have already been released, between keeping the blanket that warms you and keeping the blanket of someone who has left, whose scent you still try to find in the fabric. The universe placed this vice in Taurus because the world needs people who preserve, who don't discard culture, memory, tradition, beauty, relationships as if they were disposable. Taurus is the archivist of humanity. It keeps what others throw away and then desperately search for. But the most important file you will learn to heal is the internal one. What stays and what goes away inside you. I need to stop here, because we've reached the halfway point and I need to know if you recognize yourself in this conversation. The first three vices, pleasure, stubbornness, and hoarding, how do they appear in your life? Which of the three did you identify with most? Which one touched on something you've been carrying with shame for the longest time? I want you to answer here in the comments below, but not just for me. For the Taurus watching this video after a day where they felt completely wrong for being who they are. For the Taurus who today was called complicated, exaggerated, difficult, and who needs to hear that they're not. Right, my vices are proof that I'm made to last, not to please. This phrase isn't arrogance, it's memory. It's you reminding yourself that everything the world has tried to correct in you has a reason for existing that goes far beyond what any superficial criticism can grasp. Vice 4. Slowness as intelligence in disguise. There's a universal complaint about Taurus that people repeat as if it were a factory defect. You're too slow to decide. And Taurus hears this, internalizes it, sometimes even feels ashamed of it. But here's what I see from the outside. After studying this sign in depth, Taurus's slowness isn't hesitation, it's processing. When Taurus takes a long time to make a decision, it's not because they're paralyzed, they're checking things out. They're turning the problem over from every angle with the patience of a sculptor who knows that one wrong stroke on marble can't be undone. They're gathering sensory, emotional, and practical information that the other signs ignore because they're too rushed to stop and feel. And when Taurus decides, when they finally truly decide, they rarely need to back down, because the decision was made with the totality of who they are, not with the half that haste allows them to use. The problem arises when this slowness turns into protective procrastination, when Taurus uses "I'm still processing" to avoid what they already know needs to be done, but will cost them something. When deliberation becomes postponement disguised as prudence. The universe placed this vice in you because a world of impulsive decisions needs someone who waits for the ground to stop shaking before building. You are the foundation, and foundations are slow by necessity, not by weakness. Vice 5. Jealousy as an expression of value. This is the vice that Taurus hides the most, and the one that hurts the most when it comes to light. Taurus's jealousy isn't possessiveness in the vulgar sense of the word. It's not simple insecurity. It's not the fear of losing the person, although that fear exists, for something deeper and harder to name. It's an expression of how much Taurus values what they love. Taurus doesn't distribute its heart. It doesn't have 17 superficial connections running at the same time. When Taurus loves, be it a person, a friendship, or a project, it puts an amount of energy, attention, and loyalty into it that few signs can match. And when something or someone threatens that bond, Taurus feels it in its entire being. Not just emotionally, physically, viscerally, in that region of the stomach that Taurus knows so well. Taurus's jealousy is a direct reflection of their love, and the intensity of one measures the depth of the other. The problem arises when jealousy turns into control, when protecting the bond becomes surveillance, when the love that should be freedom begins to build fences that suffocate what it sought to preserve. The universe placed this vice in Taurus because love without depth isn't love, it's just decoration. And Taurus came to show the world what true love is, with roots, with weight, with consequences. The task is to learn to love with all that depth without turning that depth into a prison, for yourself and for those you love. Vice 6, resistance to change as self-preserving. There's a moment in every Taurus's life that's almost cinematic in its intensity. It's the moment when something needs to change. Job, city, relationship, habit, belief, and the Taurus knows it. Deep down, they know they need to change. They feel it in their body that the current situation no longer serves them. And yet, it stays. Not out of naivete, not out of a lack of perception, but because of something much deeper. The emotional cost of dismantling what has been built with such care is simply enormous for Taurus. For other signs, change can be exciting. For Taurus, change has the same weight as a small death. Because everything Taurus has built, every routine, every relationship, every project, every piece of life arranged with the patience and attention that only Taurus possesses, bears the mark of who they were when they built it. Change isn't just about changing locations, it's about accepting that yesterday's Taurus is in the past, and that hurts in a way that the world rarely validates. The problem arises when resistance to change turns into a refusal to grow. It occurs when Taurus remains in a situation that has exhausted all it has to offer, simply because familiar pain seems safer than the necessary unknown. The universe placed this vice in you because stability is a rare gift. In a world that changes for the sake of change, that discards for the sake of discarding, that confuses speed with progress, Taurus is a reminder that not all change is evolution, that some things deserve to be preserved, that patience with what has been built is a virtue. Taurus's task is to learn to distinguish between what deserves to be preserved and what is being preserved only out of fear of letting go. Vice 7, self-indulgence as a revolutionary act. And we've reached the last one, the most misunderstood of the 7, the one that most confuses those on the outside and most embarrasses Taurus when they're on the inside. Indulgence, not destructive indulgence. I'm not talking about excesses that harm health or relationships. I'm talking about that specific indulgence of Taurus, the ability and the need to give oneself what others would consider superfluous. The expensive cheese when the budget only allowed for the simple things. The whole day in bed on Sunday doing absolutely nothing productive. The clothes you bought not because you needed them but because they were exactly the color that made your heart race a little. The whole dessert, the extra blanket, the extra hour of sleep. The world calls this laziness, lack of discipline, excess. Taurus calls it survival. And here is the final revelation, the one I saved for the last addiction, because it only makes sense after all the others. Taurus indulges itself because the world never stops asking, never. People ask, work asks, responsibilities ask, bonds ask, and Taurus, which gives with a generosity that goes beyond what most can imagine, knows, on an instinctive level that precedes any reasoning, that if there is no constant replenishment, what it has to give will run out. Taurus's indulgence is not selfishness, it's energy management. It's Taurus understanding that to continue being the axis, the support, the enduring force, the sustainer, it needs to nourish itself in a way that will seem excessive to someone who has never carried so much. The universe placed this vice in Taurus because the world needs someone to teach that taking care of oneself is not a luxury reserved for those without obligations. It's a prerequisite for those who have many. And now that you've heard all 7, I need to tell you one last thing. These vices are not design flaws. They are not bugs in your system. They are functionalities that have been poorly documented by the world, which didn't know how to categorize someone who feels so deeply, loves so completely, builds so patiently, and demands so little recognition for what they sustain. You don't need to correct yourself. You need to understand yourself. And understanding doesn't mean justifying what hurts, neither you nor those around you. It means looking at each of these 7 patterns with the honesty of someone willing to ask, is this addiction serving me now, or is it trapping me? When you serve honor, when you imprison work, this distinction, made with the patience that only Taurus possesses, is the beginning of a version of you that no longer needs to apologize for being who you are. In the comments, I want you to tell me, which of the 7 vices have you always tried to hide, and which, after this video, are you willing to finally accept as part of who you are? Write the number and a word, that's all, and see how many other Tauruses will respond with the same number. You'll discover that you weren't alone for even a second. If this video reached its intended audience, subscribe, turn on notifications, and share it with a Taurus who was called difficult today, because they need to know that difficult and extraordinary are sometimes the same thing, just viewed from different angles. Until our next meeting,